Emma had always dreamed of her perfect wedding day. Ever since she was a little girl, she imagined walking down the aisle in a beautiful white dress, surrounded by the people she loved. Now that dream was about to come true. She was marrying Ryan, the man she had loved for years. He was charming, kind, and had always made her feel special. Everyone who knew them thought they were the perfect couple. Emma believed it too. The wedding preparations had taken months of planning. Every small detail had been carefully chosen. The flowers, the decorations, the music. The venue was a grand hall with shining chandeliers and soft golden lights. It was a place straight out of a fairy tale. Emma had spent endless nights making sure everything was perfect. After all, this was the most important day of her life. The guests had started arriving from different places, some even traveling long distances to be there. Emma's family was filled with excitement, and her friends couldn't stop talking about how beautiful everything looked. Her bridesmaids giggled as they helped her with her dress, adjusting the lace and fixing her veil. "You look like a princess," one of them whispered. Emma smiled, feeling a mix of nervousness and happiness. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed completely relaxed. He laughed and joked with his best man, looking as confident as ever. Emma admired that about him. No matter what, he always seemed sure of himself. She felt lucky to have him by her side. The night before the wedding, there was a small gathering with close friends and family. Everyone was in a joyful mood, raising their glasses in celebration. Emma watched Ryan from across the room, her heart filled with love. She was ready to start this new chapter of her life with him. Later that night, as the celebrations ended, Emma found herself unable to sleep. Her mind was racing with excitement. Tomorrow, she would be a bride. Tomorrow, she would stand in front of everyone and promise to love Ryan forever. She decided to take a short walk outside to clear her thoughts. The hotel hallway was quiet, the only sound being the soft humming of the lights. She walked slowly, taking deep breaths, trying to calm her nerves. Then, just as she was about to return to her room, she heard voices coming from around the corner. It was Ryan and his best man, speaking in low tones. Something about their conversation made her stop in her tracks. They sounded serious, almost secretive. She stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. What she heard next made her heart stop. Emma stood frozen in the dimly lit hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. She held her breath, straining to hear Ryan's words. At first, she thought she must have misheard. Maybe she was imagining things. But as she listened closer, the truth became painfully clear. Ryan was laughing softly, his tone filled with confidence. "I can't believe how easy this was," he said to his best man. "Emma thinks this is the perfect love story. She has no idea." Emma's stomach twisted. No idea about what? She leaned in a little closer, pressing herself against the wall, afraid they would see her. His best man chuckled. "You're really going through with it, huh?" Ryan let out a sigh. "Of course, why wouldn't I? She's got everything I need. A good family, money, connections. Once we're married, my life will be set." Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. This couldn't be real. Ryan loved her. He always told her she was the most important person in his life. But the way he spoke now, it was like she was nothing more than a tool, a way for him to get what he wanted. "Man, I don't know how you do it," his best man said. "I feel guilty." Ryan just laughed again. "Guilty? Come on. It's not like I love her. She's sweet, sure, but I've had my fun elsewhere. She's just the safe choice." Emma's hands turned ice cold. Every word cut through her like a blade. Safe choice. Had her entire relationship been a lie? She wanted to burst into the room, to demand an explanation, but her body wouldn't move. She felt trapped, like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. His best man lowered his voice. "What if she finds out?" Ryan scoffed. "She won't. She trusts me too much, and even if she does, it'll be too late. Once the wedding is done, she's stuck with me." Emma's legs wobbled, and she pressed a hand against the wall to steady herself. She felt like the world around her was spinning. The man she was supposed to marry, the man she had given her heart to, had been lying to her all along. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't help her now. She needed to think. She needed to act. She couldn't let him get away with this. She turned quietly and walked back to her room, her mind racing. Calling off the wedding was the obvious choice, but something inside her resisted. Ryan had played her for a fool, but she wouldn't let him win. No, she would go through with the wedding, but on her own terms. By tomorrow, Ryan would regret underestimating her. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her wedding dress hung neatly on a stand beside her, glowing under the soft light. Just hours ago, she had looked at it with excitement, imagining the moment she would walk down the aisle toward Ryan. But now, everything had changed. Her mind replayed Ryan's words over and over. She's just the safe choice. She won't find out. Once the wedding is done, she's stuck with me. The man she had loved, trusted, and planned a future with had been lying to her all along. A part of her still wanted to believe there was some mistake, that maybe she had misunderstood. But deep down, she knew the truth. For a moment, she thought about running away, calling off the wedding, packing her bags, and leaving without a word. But then, another thought took over. Why should she be the one to run? Why should she be the one to feel ashamed when Ryan was the one who had betrayed her? No, she wouldn't let him get away with this so easily. A new determination filled her heart. She would go through with the wedding, but she would not be the helpless, heartbroken bride Ryan expected. Instead, she would show him that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Emma took a deep breath and picked up her phone. She needed a plan. The first person she called was her best friend, Lily. Emma. Lily's voice was filled with excitement. Are you okay? Can you believe it? Tomorrow's the big day. Emma hesitated for a second before speaking. Lily, I need your help. Something in her tone made Lily's excitement fade. What's wrong? Emma swallowed hard. I just found out that Ryan, he's not who we thought he was. She took a deep breath, then told Lily everything she had overheard. By the time she finished, Lily was silent. Then, after a moment, she spoke in a cold, sharp tone. That terrible. I know, Emma cut in. And that's why I need you. I have an idea, but I can't do it alone. I'm in, Lily said immediately. Tell me what you need. Emma's lips curled into a determined smile. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to beg for answers from Ryan. No, she was going to give him the wedding he deserved, one he would never forget. She spent the next few hours making arrangements, reaching out to a few trusted people, and preparing for the moment that would change everything. The pain in her heart was still there, but now it was mixed with something stronger, power. As the sun began to rise, Emma looked at her dress once more. She would wear it. She would walk down that aisle, and she would say what needed to be said. But this wedding would not end with vows of love. It would end with the truth. The morning of the wedding arrived, and the air was filled with excitement. The grand hall was decorated beautifully, with white roses, golden drapes, and twinkling lights. Guests were arriving, dressed in their finest clothes, ready to witness a love story unfold. Everyone believed this would be the happiest day of Emma and Ryan's lives. Emma sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids who were helping her get ready. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled perfectly, and her dress shimmered like a dream. But beneath the beauty, Emma was not the same woman who had been excited about this wedding just a day ago. She felt calm, but her heart held a storm. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "This is it." Today was the day she would teach Ryan a lesson he would never forget. Lily walked up behind her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Emma met her best friend's eyes in the mirror. More than ever. Lily nodded, a small smile forming. Then let's give them a wedding they'll talk about for years. Meanwhile, in another room, Ryan was laughing with his friends, completely unaware of what was coming. He adjusted his suit and looked at himself in the mirror, smirking. "I told you guys," he said. "This is the easiest thing I've ever done." His best man chuckled. "You better put on a good act at the altar. You don't want her getting suspicious." Ryan waved a hand dismissively. "Please, Emma is head over heels for me. She won't see anything coming." Downstairs, the guests were seated, waiting eagerly for the ceremony to begin. Soft music played as people whispered to each other about how beautiful the venue was and how perfect Emma and Ryan were together. Then the moment arrived. The wedding march played, and the doors swung open. Emma walked in, looking breathtaking in her white dress. The guests sighed in admiration, and Ryan stood at the altar with a proud smile. He thought he had won. But as Emma walked down the aisle, something in her eyes was different. She was not the shy, blushing bride he expected. There was strength in her gaze, and it sent a small shiver down Ryan's spine. When she finally reached him, she took his hands, but her grip was firm, almost unshakable. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking about love, trust, and commitment. Emma listened carefully, waiting for her moment. Then it was time for the vows. Ryan smiled, ready to hear Emma promise her love to him. But as she opened her mouth, the words she spoke were not what anyone expected. She took out a folded piece of paper and looked directly at Ryan. The room fell silent. And then, in a clear, steady voice, she began to read. As Emma stood before Ryan, her heart pounded, but she didn't let the nerves show. The room was quiet, the guests waiting eagerly for her vows. Ryan, standing beside her, had a confident, almost smug smile on his face, convinced he had everything under control. He had no idea what was coming. She unfolded the piece of paper, her fingers steady. She looked at him, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. Ryan raised an eyebrow, clearly thinking she was about to say something sweet, something filled with love and devotion. But Emma had other plans. With a calm, measured voice, she began to read. "Ryan," she said, and the guests immediately perked up. "I spent years dreaming of this moment. I imagined the day I would stand before you and tell you how much I loved you, how I would dedicate myself to our future together. But I've learned something in the last 24 hours. Ryan's smile faltered slightly, confusion flickering across his face. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the tension. Emma continued, her voice steady but firm. "I overheard a conversation where you admitted that you never loved me, that you were marrying me for what I could give you, money, connections, stability. And worst of all, I heard you say that you'd been unfaithful to me over and over behind my back." Gasps filled the room. Ryan's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing as though he couldn't find the right words. Emma paused, letting her words sink in. She glanced around the room, where everyone's eyes were locked on her, shocked and confused. She had their attention now. "Do you remember that conversation, Ryan?" Emma asked, her eyes never leaving his. "When you talked about how easy this was, how you didn't love me, but I was just a safe choice. Well, I remember every word. I heard everything. And I'm not the woman who will stand by someone who has no respect for me." Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but Emma raised a hand, silencing him. "No, Ryan, you don't get to talk now. You don't get to lie your way out of this." She took a deep breath and turned her attention back to the guests. "You see, this is not the wedding I planned, but it's the wedding you deserve." Her voice was calm, but full of strength. "I wanted to show you love. I wanted to make this day perfect, but you don't deserve that. You deserve the truth, and I'm giving it to you today." Emma slowly reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, which she handed to Ryan. "Inside this envelope, you'll find proof of everything you've done. The texts, the photos, the people you thought you could trust to cover for you. All of it. And I hope you enjoy explaining it to your family, your friends, and your boss." The room was silent, the air thick with disbelief. Ryan was standing there, unable to form any words, his face twisted in a mixture of confusion and panic. The guests were staring at him now, the shock of Emma's words settling in. Emma didn't look at him again. She turned to the officiant, who was still standing there, speechless. "I think we're done here," she said firmly. "Thank you for your time." Without another word, she turned and walked down the aisle, her head held high. The guests stared after her, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Ryan stood frozen at the altar, his world unraveling before his eyes. Emma's bridesmaids followed her, their heads held high as well. They had known Emma's plan, and they were proud of her. As Emma reached the doors of the hall, she didn't look back. She was done with Ryan, and now it was time to move on with her life, on her own terms. Emma didn't look back as she stepped out of the grand hall. The sound of the wedding guests murmuring in confusion and shock seemed to fade behind her. She had done what she needed to do, made sure that Ryan would never forget what he had done to her. The truth was out, and now she was free. The cool air outside felt refreshing on her skin as she took a deep breath, walking briskly toward the quiet corner of the hotel garden. She didn't care that people were staring. She didn't care about the wedding or the shame she might have felt just hours ago. All that mattered now was her strength, her power over her own life. As she reached a bench, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She took it out, expecting a message from Lily or one of her bridesmaids. But it wasn't. It was a message from her mother. "Emma, where are you? Everyone's asking questions. Ryan is in a complete panic. Please come back inside. Let's talk." Emma stared at the message for a moment, then set the phone down beside her. The temptation to go back was strong. Her family, her friends, they were all in there. But what was she going back to? A life built on lies. She didn't need their approval. She didn't need Ryan. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Lily. "You were amazing." The message read, "You've got this. We'll figure out the next step. Just breathe." Emma smiled a little, feeling a wave of comfort from her best friend's words. Lily had been her rock, her sounding board throughout this entire process. Emma had planned this revenge meticulously, but it was Lily who had stood by her side, offering encouragement and helping her keep her head straight. The next few minutes felt like they lasted forever. Emma just sat there, her thoughts swirling. She knew she had shocked everyone in that room, including Ryan. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had done the right thing. There was no room in her life for someone who didn't value her. She wasn't a prize to be won or a stepping stone for someone else's success. She was worth more than that. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts, and she looked up to see one of her bridesmaids walking toward her, a concerned look on her face. "Emma," the bridesmaid said softly. "You okay?" Emma nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine." Her voice was steady now, filled with the calm certainty she had lacked before. I'm just thinking about what's next." Her bridesmaid sat down beside her. "You made an impact today, Emma. You don't need anyone to tell you that. Everyone will remember what you did. Ryan is probably wishing he never crossed you." Emma looked at her, her eyes filled with quiet pride. "I just want to be free. I don't want to live in someone else's shadow, pretending everything is perfect when it's not." Her bridesmaid gave her a gentle smile. "And you won't. You've got this, Emma. You're stronger than anyone realizes." Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't running away from her life. She was taking control of it. She had broken free from the false narrative Ryan had written for her, and now she could rewrite her own story. As she sat there in the quiet garden, Emma made a promise to herself. She would focus on the things that truly mattered: her career, her happiness, her friendships, and her future. Ryan was a chapter she had closed, and it was time to move on, stronger, wiser, and more in control than ever. The life she had once envisioned with him was gone, but in its place, Emma knew something much better awaited her, a life built on truth, independence, and the freedom to choose her own path. She was no longer the woman who had been deceived. She was the woman who had taken back her power. And that was enough. The days following the wedding felt surreal to Emma. She had never imagined her life would take such an unexpected turn. She had always been the type to plan every detail. And yet, here she was, moving forward from a day that was meant to be the beginning of a new chapter, but ended as the conclusion of a false story. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages pouring in from friends, family, and acquaintances, all trying to make sense of what had happened. Some were supportive, telling her how brave she was, while others, mostly family members, questioned her actions, urging her to talk things through with Ryan. But Emma didn't need to talk to him. She had made her choice, and she was standing by it. The last thing she needed was to go back to someone who had shown her nothing but disrespect. Her best friend, Lily, checked in on her daily, making sure she was doing okay. Emma was grateful for her constant support. She didn't know what she would have done without Lily during this time. She had made it clear from the start that Emma was not alone in this. "Take your time, Emma," Lily always said. "Don't rush your healing. You've got so much ahead of you." Emma had spent the first few days focusing on herself, catching up on her favorite books, taking long walks in the park, and reconnecting with the hobbies she had put aside in the whirlwind of wedding planning. Slowly, she began to feel like herself again. One afternoon, while having coffee with Lily at their favorite cafe, Emma's phone rang. She looked at the screen, hesitated for a second, and then answered. "Emma, it's me, Ryan," came the voice on the other end. Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly steadied herself. "Ryan," she said, her voice calm but firm. "What do you want?" I'm sorry. I've been a fool," he began, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "I've been thinking about everything, and I know I messed up. I want to fix things. Can we talk?" Emma took a deep breath. She wasn't angry anymore, but the hurt still lingered. She didn't need Ryan's apology. What she needed was to move on and live her life without him. "I don't think talking is going to change anything, Ryan," she said, her voice steady. "You've made your choice, and so have I. I can't go back to someone who didn't value me. I deserve better than that. And so do you." There was a long pause on the other end, followed by a soft sigh. "I understand, Emma," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I've realized too late what I've lost." Emma didn't respond right away. Instead, she just took a deep breath and let the silence fill the space between them. There was nothing left to say. "I wish you the best, Ryan," she finally said, her words clear and final. "Goodbye." As she hung up the phone, Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had made the right decision. The weight that had been on her shoulders for so long seemed to lift, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly free. Lily, who had been watching her, gave her an encouraging smile. "You did it. You're done with that chapter." Emma smiled back, her heart lighter than it had been in days. "Yeah, I'm done." Over the next few weeks, Emma continued to focus on herself and her future. She reconnected with old friends, traveled to places she had always wanted to visit, and rediscovered the joy of living for herself. Slowly but surely, she found a new sense of purpose. She was building a life that was hers and hers alone, no longer tied to someone who had never truly seen her for who she was. And as she looked forward, Emma realized something important. She wasn't just healing from a broken relationship. She was learning how to live fully, how to love herself, and how to move forward with strength and confidence. She had come out of the other side of pain and disappointment, and now she was ready to embrace the beautiful, unpredictable journey that lay ahead. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Months passed, and Emma's life began to settle into a new rhythm. She had emerged from the storm stronger, more independent, and far more aware of her worth. The wedding fiasco that had once felt like the end of her world now seemed like a distant memory, one that had taught her some of the most valuable lessons of her life. She focused on her career, throwing herself into her work with renewed passion. The energy she had once poured into wedding plans and a relationship that had drained her now fueled her ambition and creativity. She received a promotion at work, a testament to her hard work and determination. Emma smiled to herself as she looked at the congratulatory email. She had earned it. But it wasn't just her career that was flourishing. Emma had rediscovered her love for travel. She had always wanted to see the world, but had put those dreams aside for the sake of others. Now she was booking trips to destinations she had only read about in books, places where she could be herself, where no one knew her past. One particular trip to the coast was a turning point. As she stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the wind in her hair and the salt air filling her lungs, she felt a sense of peace that she had never known. It was as though the world was wide open to her, full of possibilities. She could do anything, go anywhere, and live any life she chose. Back home, she reconnected with old friends she had lost touch with. They gathered at her apartment for a cozy dinner, laughing and reminiscing about their college days. Emma realized how much she had missed these simple, genuine moments. She had been so consumed by her previous relationship that she had let these important connections slip away. But now she was reclaiming them. The friends she had always known and loved reminded her of who she truly was, someone capable of kindness, humor, and strength. They saw her for her talents and her heart, not just as someone's girlfriend or fiancée. It felt refreshing to be seen for herself, not through the lens of someone else's expectations. Then, there were the new people she met. Emma had taken up a hobby she had always been interested in: photography. On a photography course, she met others who shared her creative passion. One of them, a fellow traveler, became a close friend. They shared stories of their adventures, their dreams, and their plans for the future. It was a reminder of the many paths her life could take, each one offering a new adventure, a new chapter. While she never forgot the pain of her past, Emma realized that it had shaped her into someone wiser, someone who now knew her own worth. She had learned that her happiness didn't depend on anyone else. It was something she could create for herself. Ryan, on the other hand, had faded into the background of her life. She occasionally heard about him through mutual acquaintances, but she didn't let it affect her. She no longer felt anger or resentment toward him. In fact, she almost felt sorry for him. He had never known what he had, and now he would have to live with the consequences of his choices. But Emma didn't waste any more time thinking about him. Her future was hers to create, and she had no intention of letting anyone, not even her past, hold her back. She had the power to shape her life, to go after her dreams, and to be true to herself. It was in this newfound freedom that Emma truly flourished. She knew that life wasn't always easy, and that some challenges would always come her way. But she also knew that she was more than capable of facing them head-on, with strength, courage, and the wisdom that came from knowing her own heart. The future, as bright and unpredictable as it seemed, was hers to embrace, and with every step she took, Emma felt more and more confident that she was exactly where she needed to be.